The Scottish Salmon Fishing Podcast is brought to you by Salmon Fishing Holidays Scotland.
Welcome to the Scottish Salmon Fishing Podcast. My name's Sandy Datta.
My name's Andrew Gunn.
And the Scottish Salmon Fishing Podcast is here to keep you up to date with the latest news from the Scottish salmon fishing scene, keep you up to date with the latest catches on all the rivers around Scotland, give you some advice and helpful tips that you may want to use. We also will be having special guests on the show, and listeners will get the chance to ask questions through our Facebook page, which is the Scottish Salmon Fishing Facebook page.
And hopefully here's some lively debate.
Debate is what it's all about. In terms of myself, I've been salmon fishing in Scotland for over 30 years. I'm a very keen salmon angler. Fished on many rivers across the country, from in the north, from the Thurso, right down to the Tweed in the south of Scotland, the Scottish borders. My wife and I have set up a few years ago Scottish Salmon Fishing Surgery, which is Scotland's first online salmon fishing magazine. We also run the Salmon Fishing Holidays Scotland, which is a salmon fishing holiday company.
My name's Andy. I've been fishing on the Tay since 1975. Not for salmon so much then, but all sorts of species up to that point. Didn't start salmon fishing really till 2005, and been at Newtyle for 7 years, so going into my 8th season.
By no means myself and Andy are experts, but we've done a lot of fishing and we're good friends, and we just thought we like to, say things and discuss things the way we see it. And I'm sure that there'll be many anglers that have much more experience than we do, and we're just putting our point across, however controversial it may be. Today we're at the Newtyle Hut. It's the end on the river, on the banks of the River Tay. It's the end of the season. We're actually into November now. How would you reflect on the season this year, Andy? I think the laugh says it all, doesn't it?
I don't really like talking about it, to be fair, but no. It has been a tough season for the Middle Tay, certainly. Probably for the whole of Scotland, to be honest. But it's been particularly tough for me up here. I want to look in the mirror and never see this season again.
I think you're not the only Ghillie in Scotland that feels like that. Why do you think it's been so tough? What's happened?
Well, nobody knows the answer to that. A lot of combinations, though, probably. Whether it be predation from birds, sawbills, or from mammals in the estuary, or whether it be netsmen at sea, illegal netting by, let's say, continental European trawlers. What's gone on further in the paths back from the feeding grounds. All sorts of combinations. Some people say Storm Frank way back at the end of 15. Again, it's all wild speculation, but a combination of all these things certainly would be the first sort of call.
So you mentioned Storm Frank. So for people that don't know, an event. I mean, I think we all probably remember Storm Frank and the devastating floods that
if you lived in the UK. Yes.
If you lived in the UK, that was in 2015. So why would that have an impact in 2018?
Well, because I'm not saying I particularly agree with it, but we had huge floods for a month nearly, and some people say it would wash out all the reds. The river's so big it would push a lot of the juveniles into fields and other places away from the river. But there's been floods before and we've never had issues like this, so it's not something I would particularly blame as a whole for the demise or the lack of salmon in 2018. It
certainly wouldn't have helped.
It wouldn't have helped, but again, it's a small part of a lot of things. I mean, we had the hottest summer we've had since 76. I remember 76, and it was hot then, and that's been the hottest summer for 42 years. That's got to be. No. I'd put that at the top of the list, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, and the thing as well is, I mean, you're saying that the season on the Tay was difficult. I mean, I know from speaking to different people. I mean, away up north, I mean, at least on the Tay, to a certain extent, the fishing isn't water dependent so much. But across Scotland, the fishing's been difficult this year. And as you say, the hot summer, I mean, the rivers further up north, a lot of them, as you well know, are spate rivers, so they rely on water. And rivers like the Thurso and the Helmsdale and the Brora, these rivers had no rain since sort of late April.
Well, for these rivers, Sandy, you can put your finger on it straight away and blame the hot summer. Hottest summer for 40 years, you can blame that. But again, the hot summer didn't really kick in until June, July. Granted, it was dry in May, which would which made the water temperature rise and the level drop. But I mean, that was the start of the hot summer, really, wasn't it? And that had an effect on our spring stock. But the spring stock never turned up.
No.
For example, how many fish went through the counter at Ballochry? I mean, it's the only counter on at this end of the Tay, and I think up to date there's only 2,600 fish through it.
Normally, how many goes through it?
I think it averages 4,500 to 5,000. In recent years, there's been as much as 6,500 fish through it. So that's mostly spring stock, if not all, 90% spring stock.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I think the other thing you touched on as well was, well, you didn't touch on it, but I mean, we're all aware of the cold winter we had. We didn't really have a spring. It sort of went from winter right straight into summer.
It did indeed.
And we had like the dreaded beast from the east. And I mean, people thought that that was maybe a reason for it as well. But I think you can look into all these things. The fact of the matter was there wasn't a lot of fish around this year. No matter how you dress it up, and we can only hope that things are going to get sort of better in seasons to come.
Well, from the optimistics point of view, next year's going to be fantastic.
Well, we've got our fingers crossed. Hopefully it will be. And once the water did come, there were a few fish caught, all over Scotland, including the River Tay. But again, I think most people would agree, and most of our listeners would agree, there was a lack of clean fish.
Well, did the back end fish turn up this year again? No, that's 5 years on the trot that there's been no sort of significant back end run, and the spring run didn't happen. So that puts it all into perspective. Maybe a few fish in the summer. A lot of the spring stock that maybe would have come up in May, when it was low and warm, maybe stayed down in the bottom end of the river, the top end of the bottom half.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting you touch on the back end run. I mean, I've seen the autumn run collapse in front of my eyes, like you have. And when we're talking about an autumn run, we don't mean coloured fish caught in late August, September, October. We're talking about bars of silver. And I mean, the River Tweed is still open just now, and their autumn run, just like the Tweed was like, traditionally it was the prime autumn river. October, November, you'd be catching bars of silver, and it seems to have just collapsed. And it's actually worrying. Even rivers like the Teith, the Tay. I mean, yes, there were reasonable numbers of fish caught on the Tay. The last week of September, I think, a couple of weeks on the trot, there were over sort of 300-400 fish caught, but a lot of these were older fish.
Older stuff that didn't make it up here in the summer. Yeah,
absolutely. Why is the autumn run collapsing, Andy? All over
Scotland. A scientist, that one, or listen to somebody with some wild speculation. But again, is it just a cycle of the spring run improving and the back end run disappearing? But the spring run didn't happen this year, again for reasons that we might have discussed. The thing is, you can't really look at what's wrong with the spring run on the strength of one season.
No,
we need to see what happens next year. If we get decent conditions next year, like a cold winter, lots of snow up on the hills, and the water's low and cold right through, well, not right through, but mostly through January, February, March, and we start to get a bit of snow melt into April, and it continues into May. I mean, that's a perfect scenario. And if we don't get any spring fish on the top of that, we know there's something wrong.
Something wrong, yeah. I think, though, I suppose we don't mean to be a bit negative about this season, but I think the one really good thing this year was the number of big fish, big spring salmon caught on the Tay. I cannot remember a season when consistently, big fish, well over 20 pounds, 25, 30 plus were consistently being caught. And I think that's absolutely great for the river.
It is. Biomass, less fish but bigger fish, so you've still got a similar amount of eggs if you take the amount of eggs that a big fish will lay compared to a smaller fish. But is it because these fish are travelling further away and having to come and they're away from sea longer? Maybe this year was a year when the spring fish were on that sort of turn where they're having to travel a little bit further, henceforth not so many managed back. Yeah. So next year will be the tell.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it already.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, I think we all are. I mean, I think during the close season now, there's anglers that are at the fly tying vice or they're shooting now, and I suppose as salmon anglers we've got to be optimistic, haven't we? And we always think next season's going to get better, and who knows? Hopefully it will do, and that sort of starts off in the spring.
Well, the problem with salmon fishing, salmon fly fishing, spinning, whatever, it's It's the tug is the drug. It's a disease. Once you start, you can't stop. It's just an infection. Just grows right through you.
Yeah, it's a passion, isn't it? I mean, an absolute passion. I mean, in terms of the Newtyle Beat, where you're the Ghillie off, where so you have clients coming here from all over the world?
Yeah, all over the place. Yeah, America. A lot of Americans this year. Scandinavians. I've had South Africans. Let's not go into a world map of people I've had here, but I've had people from all over the world. But everybody, not everybody, but anybody, any salmon fisherman worth the salt wants to come and fish the Tay at some point in his life, you know.
And that's to catch a big salmon, isn't it? I mean, the Tay is renowned. Yeah. If you want to come to Scotland and catch a big salmon, I would have to say the Tay is the place to come to.
You know, I think, Sandy, most rivers in Scotland, all rivers have got the potential to catch a big fish. The thing I like about the Tay is that you can properly stretch your lines in your arms. You've got a big river to punt a big line right across. You can cast right across, and that's the enjoyment of it. You know, some people like to fish a small river, just dabbling a wee line across. Me personally, I like to get the 15-footer or modern 14-footers now and get a spay line as far as I can and. I mean, wait for it to swing and just there's the yellow. That's him.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I was brought up on the small Highland rivers, you know, and we've just finished a week salmon fishing on the All Ness, which is a beautiful, intimate river. If there's water in it, you can use a 13, 14-foot rod, but a lot of the time, you know, you fished All Ness as well, Andy, and a lot of the time you're using a trout rod and 11-foot trout rod, and I suppose there's a pleasure in both. I mean, I enjoy fishing both, you know, and you know, I think when it comes to the River Tay, people get preoccupied about trying to, you know, fly cast to the other side, but the way to look at it, I suppose, and you'll know this better than me being a Ghillie, is you actually concentrate, you know, a good Ghillie will show you the lies, and it's maybe you're all concentrating on a river within a river more than trying to cast to the other side. You know?
I mean, if it's 4 and 5 feet, the fish are probably not going to be right in the middle. They're going to be coming up the edges, so you don't need to be punting throwing a big line right across. But again, it's in these conditions that I'm talking about are the conditions that I think we all love, where you've got, say for example, in May, and you've got 1.5 foot on hour gauge. You know there's fish heading and tailing or being shown in the beat, and you're fishing a spay line with a fast tip and a fly of your choice or a fly you've tied yourself, and you're coming through a pool and you're just buzzing with the anticipation of that line just tightening up and you lift into that fish and you don't know how big it's going to be.
Yeah, and I mean that's why we do it, isn't it? I mean that's
it keeps you going.
That's absolutely 100%. And I mean, you know, there's been quite a lot of controversy about, you know, catch and release and anglers having to put fish back, and a few years ago the law was introduced in that all salmon caught in Scotland, all spring fish caught up until the 1st of April have to go back. What's your thoughts on that, Andy?
Well, it's a start, isn't it? I mean, people that know me will know my take on catch and release. I'm all for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I like to catch a fish on a fly. If you kill a fish, it's definitely not going to spawn. Some people, the late Peter Gray, he said in his book that a fish that has been caught and released will not spawn. It becomes sterile, which... Where he gets that from? I mean, I know he did a lot of experiments and stuff.
It was on the Tyne, wasn't it?
It was the Tyne, Peter Gray, yeah. But whether some people like to just use that as an excuse to kill fish, I don't know. But I just don't think in this day and age, where we ask nets to be removed, we ask the Faroese and Icelanders and the Greenlanders to stop netting fish, and the fish come back. We fish for pleasure and enjoyment. We catch a fish, it gives us that pleasure and enjoyment, and we've got it at our feet, and we decide to take it up the bank and knock it on the head. I don't get it personally. I
have to say, I mean, I suppose it's the few things that we agree on when it comes to salmon fishing, and I mean, it's a personal choice, but you know, myself and Samantha fish, and we choose to put all our fish back, and you know, I totally agree with you on that point. It's a personal choice. I do not enjoy killing fish. I can't remember actually the last time I actually killed a salmon, and I actually, with the advent of like mobile phones and you know, modern day technology, there's not really any reason, I don't think, really to kill a fish, you know, unless it's a bleeder. You know, you want to take you catch your fish of a lifetime, or you catch a nice springer, you carefully handle it, you try and keep it in the water as much as possible, get a nice photograph, even a video of you playing the fish, and then you put it back.
It's easy nowadays, isn't it? I mean, I get that salmon are a prey species. Everything eats them. They're a harvestable species when there's plenty of them, but there just isn't plenty of them, and that's the size. Look at what we've just been discussing this year. And even if we do get a bumper year next year, that's not any reason to make the rivers all category one again or whatever.
Absolutely. But I mean, there'll be many people listening, Andy, that are not keen on jumping up and down and shouting at us for saying that. Now let me play devil's advocate, okay? And what would you say to the person that has come to salmon fish for a week, and we're not talking about in the spring, but say during the summer months, and he's paid money to fish, he's stayed in local hotels, and he's caught 4 or 5 nice fish, and he catches the right fish, maybe a cockfish, around about 6-7 pounds, clean of grills, and he wants to take that home to be able to eat that. I mean, what can you say? What can you say to someone like that?
Well, just because he has spent money for 6 days salmon fishing and caught a 7. What about the guy who comes for a day and catches a 6 or 7 pound grills? Is he still just because he hasn't spent as much money as Angler A, who's spent thousands on hundreds on accommodation and fishing, and Angler B, who's spent nothing on just on a day's travel and back down the road? Why should Angler A be allowed to kill the fish over Angler B?
But and I understand what you're saying. And
if he's caught 4 fish, fantastic. Let me see the pictures, sir, and I'll tap you on the back and say, well done for putting them all back.
But what happens if he wants to actually eat some wild salmon?
What can I say to that? I mean, wild salmon, give it a rest for a few years till we see if the stocks stocks go back up before we start.
Yeah, so
it depends. Does that angler really enjoy catching fish, or does that angler really enjoy eating the fish? Personally, I can eat salmon. I don't mind salmon, but I'd rather put a 7 pound cockfish after 4 or 5 fish. I'd rather still put it back than bounce on it. But that's me. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Of course. But we all know as well, I suppose, and I mean...
Sandy, can I interrupt? Because I'm quite passionate about this. Yeah. What I can't stand, and I'm sorry if I'm going to upset any Ghillies or anybody else that might be listening, and I'm sure there is. See, timeshare beats further down the river, for example. If they're fishing for a week and they say, well, we've paid for our timeshare, we bought it 25 years ago, we pay our maintenance fee every year, we tip the Ghillie, whatever we do, and we've got 6 or 7 fish, and I'm taking a 20 pound hen fish home that's got full of ripe eggs, it's coloured. Well, what's the point in that? And they can't say to me it doesn't happen, because I know it happens.
Do you think that happens?
Of course it happens. I've seen the
a coloured hen fish?
Coloured hen fish, coloured codfish, regardless. They're still getting chapped on the head.
But what
winds me right.
But what I'm putting to you is if it's the right fish, and if it's a 6-7 pound...
We've discussed that already, but I've told you what I think about that.
There's another argument here as well, and I think you're aware, and I think, if you took a poll across most of Scotland from the Ghillies and beat owners, they would say that there are less and less, there's a number of people leaving the sport, and there's less and less people coming into the sport.
Well, good, because that'll keep the golf manufacturers happy, won't it?
Well, that's one point, but what would you say if you're trying to attract new people to the sport and some people are... I know that some people will say that the reason why they don't want to come fishing anymore is because they can't take a fish. Now, to me, just like you probably, Andy, to me, that is, well, these people are coming salmon fishing for the wrong reason. But then their argument is that they've paid their money, but they don't want to be dictated to by the Ghillie or the beat owner what they can do.
Just because there's rules all over the world, but we can't call that a dictatorship, can we? There's rules with how you drive. It's not the highway code's not a dictatorship at the end of the day, is it? Rules about what you do with your salmon isn't a dictatorship either. So, but again, it's the anti-catch and release mob that are coming up with all that sort of stuff as well. I know you're, like you said, devil's advocate. You're coming up with all the things to try and...
Well, I think we have to try and balance the argument. Try and balance the argument,
But at the end of the day, I'm all for catch release, and it goes back to the same old. We can't expect... if I was a netsman, say I was the owner of the netting on Montrose Basin there, right, and I was being told, dictator to, in your words, that I can't net salmon anymore because the ordinary anglers, not that for that reason, and I can't net salmon anymore because there's a shortage of wild Atlantic salmon. So we're asking you not to net fish anymore. Whether you're getting compensated for it or not doesn't really matter. So he doesn't net his fish for 5 or 6 years. The fish all head up the river, and anglers are catching them and chapping them on the head. He's going to be looking at that and going, well, why are you allowed to kill him and I'm not? And that's my biggest point here.
I think also, I think, and I agree with you, but I think also we are focusing a lot on catch and release, and I think, the demise of the Scottish salmon, or the demise of the Atlantic salmon worldwide, is a multifactorial characteristic. Yes. And I agree with you, like any salmon that goes back, every little helps. And, there are so many things, I think that, what man has done, as you mentioned as well, predators, and also what's going on out at sea. These fish are having to travel further and further due to global warming and the food pyramid chain, so to speak. The lack of food for the krill, and then that's what the salmon sort of feed on. And I think all these things have led to the demise of the salmon. Yes, catch and release is one thing, but I think it's a very, very small, and it's important, but a very small part of the jigsaw.
Well, the thing is, we've gone on about how the salmon, we haven't really gone on about it, but in private we've gone on about the struggle that salmon has from when it's hatched in the river, the headwaters, and then it leaves 2 or 3 years later, and they show up and the gooseanders smash them, and they travel across big, in effect, lunar landscapes because the sea's been wrecked with scallop
bridges.
Yeah. So the salmon have to get there, and then they get up to the feeding grounds. They survive all the shoals of mackerel. They survive the seabirds. They get to the feeding grounds again. They survive possibly nets, whatever else eats them up there, and then they come back through the same journey back. They come back into the river. They manage to avoid the seals and the dolphins, which there's a plethora of these days. They come into the river, and they're in the river thinking, yes, my journey's nearly done. I just have to hang about now, waiting for Mr. or Mrs. Right to come along and do the business and repopulate the river. He's sitting there, wee cascade comes over his head. He thinks, I'll just take that, because I used to take little things like that when I was young. Oh, here he goes. The guy's into the fish, plays the fish. The salmon that has gone through all I've just said comes back, and the guy bounces it on the head. I don't really think if the salmon makes it back into adulthood and comes back into the river as an adult, he's done 99.9% of his life.
Yeah.
He just needs to survive until he can spawn. The fact that he's made it back is testament to his ability or his luck or whatever it is. Then he gets bounced on the head. And another thing I want to say is that it's the scientists, or certain scientists, are saying that the salmon are having to travel further to feed. But the Greenland, the mass that is Greenland hasn't moved any further away than it's always been. It's always been there. It's never going to move. Greenland and Faroes and Iceland, they're all feeding grounds. So they're not. So why are people saying that fish are having to travel further to feed?
Well, because I think fish travel
grills
to
might have to travel
areas.
further. Maybe where they're feeding around the Faroes, maybe there's less feed for them there, and they've had to travel further north to get feed. Maybe that's what they mean.
Well, I think it's an interesting debate, and it'll go on and on and on, And I suppose like everyone hopes, that the fishing does get better in Scotland for all concerned.
Yeah.
And let's hope, fingers crossed, that the 2019 season will be a productive one. I mean, from a personal point of view, from a point of view on the River Tay, what's your hopes and aspirations for next year?
I just hope that we get a good well, a year with no wind for a start. That's been 2 windy years in a row, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Horrendous. And that we get a decent winter, a cold one, which I know a lot of people don't like, and we get a rubbish summer for all the sunbathers.
Absolutely.
That'll help.
And then we're all happy, aren't we?
Yeah. And can I just go back to people getting into the sport as well? Well, people that are now getting into the sport, whether it be from fishing stock ponds or whatever, fishing trout rivers, they're coming into the sport now at a tough time, but all that is going to do for them is they're going to come into the sport and they'll be used to fishing 6, 7, 8, maybe more days of a season and not catching a fish. Maybe going to catch 2 or 3 fish out of that day, and they're going to think the world is a great place. The salmon fishing is back. It's not like the guys that saw the 70s and 60s, 70s and 80s. They must look at it now and just think, well, what is the point? It's just dropped off the cliff, and it kind of has, But anybody new to the sport, they haven't really seen that. They can hear stories about it. They can see old pictures about it.
Absolutely.
But they don't expect too much. Is what I'm trying to say. So if they
do
get a good time.
Yeah. Good. In the next episode, we will be having a discussion on spey casting and some handy hints and tips, which will be pretty helpful. In addition to that, we have also been lucky enough to get an exclusive interview with Mr. George Doole, who is the head ghillie on the Thurso River. He will be giving us a unique insight into what it is like to fish on one of Scotland's most prolific salmon rivers. As well as that, he will also give us some useful hints and tips. In the meantime, if any of our listeners have any questions, they can put these to us on our Scottish Salmon Fishing Podcast page, Facebook page. And we'd just like to say a big thank you for listening to us, and we hope you join us for the next podcast. Thank you, and tight lines.
The Scottish Salmon Fishing Podcast was brought to you by Salmon Fishing Holidays Scotland.